guys, welcome to the Revive Stronger podcast. It is actually the Improvement Season podcast, but it's one of the same, isn't it, really? So I didn't screw that up too badly.
That's true.
How are you on that end, Pascal? Have you had ice cream today?
No, my belly is full of sweet, lovely Cheerios.
Cheerios. Oh, not oats today.
No, had a sweet and juicy bowl right before the podcast.
What?
And
Cheerio
the post-branding
branded?
period kicks in big time. That's why I needed to compensate with a cup of coffee. Like, honestly.
Do you? I just had. Oh, I actually feel horrible even saying this. I had 100 grams of raisin wheat and 100 grams of Curiously cinnamon, and then egg whites, a bowl of egg whites, and 100 grams of grapes and blueberries.
What's so bad about that? I mean, the mixture is.
Oh, it's fine. It's just a lot of.
Yeah, but I mean, come on.
I'm just like eating.
Everything is just like portion sizes for us are not what the normal portion sizes are. So here today, I wanted to plug in the Cheerios into my MyFitnessPal. So I typed in Cheerios, and because, of course, we have like a database for German products, right? German names and stuff, or German products in general. And then, though, if you're typing in Cheerios, a lot of American entries come up. And every fucking thing is with cups.
Yes.
And it's just like, what the fuck, eh? Give me something that tells me something in grams. And I couldn't find any. It was so annoying. And then I needed to do the calculation over on Google, like, what are cups for Cheerios in grams, for example? So annoying, eh?
They do so many things in cups.
Like,
some cups is the time I find cups handy is because I can visualize a cup. So if I'm eating a meal out and I want to guesstimate, I find cups is quite a nice way of kind of being like, oh yeah, that looks like a cup of rice maybe, and I don't know the grams.
Is everything kind of measured in cups? Also something like an apple, for example?
Cups of apple. It'd be chopped apple. They probably have cups of chopped apple or banana.
I was just like, why the fuck isn't there any kind of entry with grams? Everything was with cups.
Type UK, everything. You'll find like Cheerios, 100 grams.
Yeah. But it was lovely to have a bowl of Cheerios, because I'm slowly at a point where it's also like I'm having a hard time actually eating like all of the foods that I have to eat, which is basically 1,000 calories less than you, but still everything coming from like wholesome foods, vegetables and stuff like that. Having a hard time, especially when you're training out or training twice daily. It's a little bit inconvenient at times, and that's why I now have like 4 meals out of the day. Instead of 3, like bigger meals. Normally I have like a whey shake very early in the morning, right before I'm going to a training session. This is something that I don't really count as a meal, but kind of it is, right? And then I have this kind of a snack, 150 gram bowl of Cheerios as a snack between lunch and dinner.
Yeah, my 3 of my meals, they're not meals. Like I just told you my meal. It's not like it's a meal. And my breakfast consists at the moment of a glass of orange juice. I have a Lucozade within my session and a protein shake and an apple. That's my breakfast, because my appetite. What's your appetite like in the mornings? Are you okay in the morning? Shit. Yeah. Weird.
So for me, I could easily. That's why in the past I was doing something like intermittent fasting, because it was just my natural sensation of hunger. And I could easily go just with a protein shake and some coffee for, I don't know, at least till 10 or 11. Yeah. And then first the hunger would kick in like big time. Now, though, I think, so I'm always eating breakfast with the other guys at around 7. And this, I think it's more out of a habit that I'm coming home from the first training session. I'm sitting down with the family and having breakfast together, just because it is a habit. That's why ghrelin is then kicking in and I can eat something.
Yeah, it's so odd because it's odd to me because it seems like, I don't know, a lot of people I talk to, the appetite is generally quite poor in the morning. I was speaking to Charlton Banks, Charlie, on Instagram, just being like, I know he struggled with his appetite before, and it's like, is your appetite bad in the morning? He's like, yeah, my appetite's bad in the morning. And it's just like, the more people I talk to, the more clients I work with, morning eating is not particularly something that people are fond with, but And that sounds very like natural, almost like people just aren't hungry in the morning. And it's like, well, why is chrononutrition, which is like circadian rhythm, eating like that way, why is that finding that eating early is better? Because I don't know, it's like counter to what we're seeing. It's so strange.
Yeah, absolutely. But I still eat something because I know that it sets me off positively for the day. Yeah. And that's why I actually do this instead of actually going down the route of intermittent fasting. From a more of a listening to my body, right? Because I just think, just theoretically speaking, I think that eating something and have a more distributed meal pattern is better than having fasting windows.
Yeah.
It's just my gut feeling. Maybe there are some studies contradicting that, right? But just my gut feeling, and just like from a logical perspective, doesn't really make sense to me that something that where you're not eating should be more anabolic than having fast. What did I say? Not eating is more anabolic than eating. Kind of doesn't really make sense to me, and that's why I rather have it distributed and try to think logically, even if that may not be the case. I don't know.
It's one of those things where we've discussed it before, where so many people are like, oh, like you must spread your protein through the day because maximizing muscle protein synthesis. And I mean, there are some papers in support of that, but there's also some counter evidence to it. So it's kind of like, well, I think most people agree that it makes sense to do that. It's the same with, we were just talking about it in our team chat, where it's like full range of motion, and how there's actually like, I don't know, 8 or 9 studies, and it's not like clear cut full range of motion always beats out partial range. But when I just think about logically, like you're working a muscle through a fuller range, you're going to activate more muscle units. Surely that's going to grow more tissue. Like logic just kind of beats out what I'm thinking. But I mean, we may eventually find that we're wrong on both regards. But
yeah, and the thing is that logic, what we deem as logic, is always also impacted by our subjective biases or just biases in general. So that's why we most of the time find things logically for us. Because it's so hard to wrap our head around something that is logic, but we are doing the contrary to that, right? Who would do that most of the time? No one really. So it could be that, of course, in the future, we are proven or disproven basically on our beliefs. But right now, just everything for me just tells me that eating something is probably better for the entire endeavor of ours than not eating.
Yeah. It's actually, I'm glad you brought this up actually, because I'm currently slowly listening to Thinking Fast and Slow, and it kind of gets into this like, don't fall into just, oh, this makes sense because, I don't know, like the earth is flat because all I can see is it looks flat when I look forward or something, because that's like obviously a fallacy, but it's so easy for the human brain because it's like, oh, that feels nice, that sounds right. And something recently came up with one of my clients, and this is something I've thought before, where it's kind of your push to pull ratio and how it should be evenly split. Like you should do as much with your pushing musculature, like your chest muscles mostly, as much as your back. And then I've also heard like you should have a 2-to-1 ratio. And there's even, apparently she was telling me there's courses that are saying these things. And I think I've even potentially read it in textbooks. And then I was like, this is something I used to think, but now I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense, because why would you train your bicep as much as your tricep, or your quad as much as your hamstring, your chest as much as your back? Surely it's just like how much that individual muscle group can recover from, like each individual group's like MRV and like recoverability. But I don't know if you've heard that kind of the push and pull, you should have it even. It's so strange that became like just a thing that you should do. And I always would program like that for like a few years. Yeah.
I mean, people, or the human mind is always very good at finding explanations to soothe itself. This has to do, or this is what humans always have done, all right? Especially when there are things that we couldn't explain in the past. We've then came up with gods, for example, right? Because we couldn't really explain the things that happened just in the world. And I think that there are also, just like in, I don't want to actually compare it to what we've done in the past and actually bringing up gods and so, but I think that there may be some similarities to that. If we can't or if we don't really have a good and valid explanation for that, people are just making things up most of the time. Maybe it's based on a theory, and that theory turns then into just taking it for granted that this is a fact, but in reality, it has never been proven to be a fact.
Yeah. I wonder how many of those are within like our current like training nutrition protocol. So we just do
Probably
them because
also many that we don't even think of.
Yeah. Like one that springs to mind is like I've had clients, I imagine you've had it actually, Pascal, where they've asked me like, why haven't we got an overhead press in the program? Like I always do overhead press. Surely you do like vertical push, vertical pull. And I'm like, we have lots of flat and incline pressing and lateral raises and upright rows. We don't need the overhead press. Like we don't need to go into that whole discussion, but it's just interesting because people are like, no, overhead press, you just have that in the program always.
Yeah, absolutely. No, totally.
Or even like a squat or a deadlift. Like there was times in which I think that's becoming more and more kind of that dogma of you must squat and deadlift is being removed. But it's just, it's actually funny how times change like that.
Yeah. But I also have to say, in regards to coming back to the fasting thing, I haven't looked into the scientific literature in a very, very long time. I have the feeling that also the discussions around that died off a little bit. There was a time where that was the topic. Everyone was talking about kind of fasting here, fasting there, throwing around with kind of confirmation bias studies and stuff like that, cherry picking things. And now I have the feeling that it's not very much discussed anymore.
No. It's kind of, I feel like at least in the evidence-based sphere, it's accepted that intermittent fasting, what's it called? Doesn't respect nutrient timing kind of recommendations. And so it's slightly unoptimal for kind of the person trying to seek maximal muscle growth or retention. So that's at least my perspective. But we do live in a little minute world where we don't see everything else that's going on. Sometimes I'm reminded of that when I see some stuff on like Netflix and I'm just like, oh crap. Or I hear like a PT in the gym talking about something and I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah. This is so funny because I just recently said to Katie, we are living so much in our own bubble without realizing what's outside of it. Especially now that we aren't really allowed to travel as much. That's where you are caught in a bubble and you don't really realize what's going on in the rest of the world because you are basically just seeing what people want you to see, especially also news and stuff like that, right? I really do believe that we are very much clueless and ignorant to how other people are doing in the rest of the world.
It's quite scary.
Yeah.
And then you get presented whatever the news channels want to present. So, it's definitely an interesting one.
It is.
Where are you in your mesocycle now? Week 3?
Yeah, just finished week 3 here today. Man, it's getting tough again. But at the same time, I'm loving it so much at the moment. Training is going so well. It feels so productive. This is clearly the best gaining phase I've ever done so far.
Fantastic.
I have the feeling that everything is just in check. My mindset, the way, my health overall, my body fat, just also the knowledge around lifting. So in regards to how to lift properly, of course, probably in hindsight, then like in the future in hindsight, I look back at this year and be like, okay, I'm not now much further ahead than back then. Could definitely be, but right now in the moment, it feels like the best gaining phase I've ever done. And I'm just excited to now move forward. You've posted one of those pictures like yesterday from you from 2017, I think it was, right? 2017. I was over in London. We were training at that gym and took some pictures together. And I also had a look at these pictures just recently. And man, I would love to actually see us together, basically the same setup, taking pictures together again and then comparing those to now. I would very much imagine that both you and I, we look completely different to how we looked 2017. And it's crazy that, and this is something that we've also talked about offline here throughout this week, that we sometimes, both you and I, we have to deal with that imposter syndrome of questioning ourselves, being like, why the hell do people listen to us? There are such great minds out there, the experts, Eric Helms, Mike Israetel, all the other scientists and stuff. And why do people listen to us? And then I'm thinking, like, why did they even listen to us in 2017? Right? I mean, just taking a look at myself back in 2017, and also the way we looked there, I think, like, I don't know, this is always kind of where I'm in a conflict with myself and questioning myself and doubting myself, but also then, of course, looking back and be like, this is cool because we actually moved forward a lot and we put in a lot of effort, which pays off. Don't know where I wanted to go with this, but yeah, maybe you have something to say about that.
It helped me so much just expressing to you via that voice message how I felt in terms of just feeling stale, feeling that imposter syndrome, because as soon as I had voiced that to you, and I also kind of told you my rational thoughts of this is not good rational thinking, because I've had to talk you out of the imposter thing, and then you came back to me basically saying back similar to what I'd said. But as soon as you said it, I was just like, yeah, now I feel more confident. I feel better about things again. So I think we all go through those times where we question ourselves, because it is like, why listen to us when there are such smart individuals in the field? And like you rightly put, like, we are day in, day out doing this, and we're working with hundreds and hundreds of people who are doing similar things. So I think we probably underestimate the experience that we have there. And I think scientists and practitioners combined are the best. And the good thing is we collaborate with a lot of the scientists, and we can kind of use that to make sure that we get the best results for people. And we get to, comment on things where, on paper, this looks to be the way to do things, but what is actually that like in practice? So I still feel it though. Like some days I'm just like, I don't want to turn up today, but
it's just a good confirmation looking back at 2017, or just like looking back at the past, and not just only from a knowledge perspective, be like, holy shit, I've come such a long way now without even having realized it. And especially also from a physique perspective, just seeing that picture, both you and I together side by side. And now I know that if we were to take those pictures now, side by side, and do a before and after, it would just blow my mind from both you and my perspective. And it's cool to see that even though that we are not genetically blessed, the amount of work and effort that we are both putting into that is paying off, and that what we are doing is also working. Maybe it may not be the best thing. Maybe it is, right? But it is definitely working, and it's cool to see that, and it's cool to be kind of, I don't want to call it a role model, but more of a testament of what it is that you're preaching, that it's actually also working.
No, absolutely. And I think I know the pictures you're referring to, and I'd love to be able to like present them on screen or something, because
I would love to have the same outfit on.
That red vest.
I was wearing the red vest from 3DMJ that you gave me because I hadn't had a training show with me, and then just like some very tight tights.
I think people will be shocked how much you've improved since then, actually. I think maybe people think me because I put myself out there more, but actually, I think maybe you've actually come on further in that period of time.
I think we both made major leaps forward.
It would just, it's exciting. Actually, this is where I was going to go. I know you kind of said to me you weren't sure what the next phase was going to be for you. Have you come to any? Are you going to make a last minute decision?
Yeah, it's so hard because I'm still in an ambivalent state about next year. Because it's like we discussed last week already in the podcast. I'm still quite uncertain of what is about to happen in the world, right? Because I don't think things will get better anytime soon. And I think it will be a kind of a fluctuating thing of like loosening the restrictions and putting more restrictions again on the society, right? And it's going back and forth because the numbers are rising, numbers are coming down, numbers are rising again, coming down. And I also think that a vaccine, I don't know when it will come out, and if when it's out, will it actually then also just be able to cure everyone or also vaccinate everyone? And also how long of a time frame will that take to give a proper vaccination to to anyone out there. And as long as there are people out there who are not wanting to get vaccinated, that virus will be around. As long as there are people who are avoiding to wear masks, or who, I don't know, try to refute that this virus is real or so, the virus will be there. Right? And as long as this is taking place, I think the regulations and the restrictions will also take place. And that's why I'm a little bit uncertain of how the next year will look like. And what if next year I don't think that it will come that far, but what if, once again, especially around the show time, the COVID cases spike again massively in the UK, and it ends up like Christopher, for example, from Norway, which we just brought up here, one of the last episodes. Yeah. He can't participate at the UK DFBA shows or BMBF. UK DFBA, BMBF?
UK DFBA, he was aiming for. But they're both happening.
Yeah, because he would have stayed, or he would have needed to actually travel to the UK 2 weeks prior to the show so that he can prove or make a test.
Quarantine,
and be quarantined and then cleared again. Of course, I mean, if you haven't planned in for that, also financially speaking, you can't do that. And it could always happen that this will also occur next year. And that's why I'm so uncertain whether I want to actually compete next year or what to do in order of moving forward. And yeah, a little bit of uncertainty now when it comes to the entire planning. I will make, of course, a decision very soon. But as of yet, I haven't made one.
Fast, efficient fat loss. Does that sound like music to your ears? The mini cut movement might just be for you. Mini cuts are like robbing the fat bank. You want to get in and out with as much fat as possible. In a short period of time, you could easily look to lose 6 to 12 pounds of fat. The mini cut movement is excellent. There's group support for extra accountability and also expert help within the group. We have educational videos to keep you on track along the way, and you get all your nutrition and training customized and individualized for you. So if that sounds of interest, get involved with the mini cut movement. I think it is just one of those annoying things where we love planning and you almost can't perfectly plan for it. And I know it was crazy. I just saw Cliff Olsen posted one of his athletes who actually got COVID and dieted through COVID, I think, which is just nuts. Like, I laugh about it, but it's not even particularly funny. It's just crazy. And I know even Matt August messaged me and asked, like, what do you think? He was basically planning in whether to do an active recovery or a primer. And I think he's like trying to plan around COVID and he wants to compete because he's looking pretty dicey at the moment. And it's just funny that I think there's probably a lot of the listeners who are thinking about next year and they're like, should I, shouldn't I? And it's like we said last time, like, just avoid setting yourself on fire. And I think you're okay because I'm kind of in that position where, well, I don't need to make a decision at all yet.
Yeah, for me, it's just about, first and foremost, lifestyle circumstances also impacting the family, because Tony is now actually, it was kind of a mess, and I don't want to go too much into detail about daycare and all that kind of stuff, but it was a back and forth here and there, yada, 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 and now he's actually going to the kindergarten already at the midst of November. But right now, he is at a daycare. And it has been a back and forth. And now, when he's going to the kindergarten, I probably need to make room and some time to be the one who's introducing him or being there for him in the first week. And that means that I probably can't train twice daily during that time. And that could also be the perfect time for a prima phase. However, if I'm doing a prima phase there and then decide to do a mini cut afterwards, I would do a mini cut throughout the Christmas period. And then the question comes up, do I want this? To be honest, I don't really care about Christmas, and I'm not participating at many Christmas dinners or so. But at the same time, it's still something that is on my mind as well. Or do I want to go straight into a mini cut here? These are just, I know it sounds like first world problems to have. I know that it is. But we are bodybuilders, and this is our endeavor, and this is our journey. And of course, we are thinking about these things as well. And that's why I'm a little bit kind of, okay, what's the best decision? Or at least, in my perception, in that moment, what's the best decision moving forward? And I don't know yet. I don't know.
I think I know exactly what the answer is for everyone listening. everyone should mini cut before Christmas and then have a massive appetite
Binge
for all
their
your
face off,
Christmas parties and dinners.
So that
join the mini cut movement.
Yeah, so that the 4 kilograms that you've lost throughout the mini cut will be regained in just like 3 days.
Phase potentiated, mass gaining, perfection. That's my plan anyway.
Yeah, losing some muscle mass and regaining all of the lost weight just in pure fat. That's the goal.
But I know it's funny because when Christmas does come around, because I'm very ambivalent towards Christmas, I'm just like, Christmas is Christmas, like whatever. I can take Christmas Day off dieting, but I'm fine dieting. We both dieted through Christmas last year, I think. So, but for a lot of clients, I'm like, ideally we would diet over Christmas, but I know that's not always acceptable. Clients, their kind of wants come first, and like obviously, like you said, it's even you're thinking like, is this? And I'm thinking it as well. I'm like, I don't really want to diet over Christmas, and I shouldn't be, thankfully. But sometimes these structures and your kind of periodization doesn't always work out as perfectly as you wanted. So it's funny. I'm having those discussions with some clients. I'm sure some people are listening are thinking about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always the one who's cooking, so I'm the chef. So whatever is served on Christmas Day, I am in control of that. So broccoli and chicken.
That was like the protein cake. You can have a protein Christmas pudding.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it, kids. Enjoy the feast, and thank Christ for it.
I think Mine Protein even have like Christmas flavors, don't they? So you can just
probably
protein shake, eggnog, like everything. I think you can basically get everything. That's ridiculous.
Did you watch my vlog that I've made about the protein brownie that I tried to create for Katie? I completely messed up. That was the worst. It was supposed to be a brownie, but it wasn't a brownie anymore, and it wasn't a cake either. It was just like, it was so dry. I couldn't really chew it without some water. It wouldn't go down. Unbelievable.
Not good.
And making some brownies, and especially I ordered the recipe from Bulk Powders. There's not that much that you can mess up. And I still messed it up big time. I should have done your protein brownie recipe from like
the beanie.
Yeah, exactly, from 2016. I think I still have it somewhere as a screenshot from Snapchat back then.
Oh, amazing. I was just thinking about the beanie brownies, and they got dry, but the key was putting on top, I think it was like Choc Shot mixed with like Philadelphia Lightest. You could spread that over and it gave it a bit of moisture.
Now people are curious what it is, especially because we asked for dieting foods the last time around.
Oh, we did, so so we have to pick the winner from that.
Yeah. People are now curious what the beanie brownie recipe looks like.
I had a few weird recipes. Beanie brownie, and then I had, what was it, like a jelly mixed with Greek yogurt. That was epic. Like, that was a big volume. I would avoid those sort of things probably when I'm dieting next time.
It's crazy, right? Because we've talked about in the past of eating more maturely now, also when you're dieting. Man, what I eat or ate for fucked up things when I was dieting for the first time, just to avoid hunger. Just like protein fluff. Best example.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, I can't eat that anymore. Not purely because of the taste, but more so because it caused me to have the most severe stomach cramps of my life. And there was this one time, and I told Katie that story just 2 days ago, where I needed to actually call the ambulance, and it was a weekend, to my home because I was lying on the couch and I couldn't move because I had so severe stomach cramps. And I thought my... or what's it called again? The appendix was actually just like exploding. I thought that this was happening, and that's why I was just laying on the couch, and I thought like, okay, if you're not moving and you're calling an ambulance, they can hopefully rescue and save you, right? And they came home to me and they said that it's only gastritis. So here we are, protein fluff, Man, never again protein fluff.
Oh dear. Yeah, I had one similar experience and I was like, I can't do this again. And you can, if the more you like churn it up or whatever, you mix it, the bigger it gets. So I just like watch it mixing for like half an hour.
I was also someone, sometimes I actually, so do you know those KitchenAid things, right? I didn't have one of those, and they are super expensive. So what I did, I was creating my own, where I set up the mixer on kind of boxes, and then I squeezed it, and then I left it on and went outside of the room, and it just turned for like 10 to 15 minutes, and it was huge. And then I ate it, and basically what it is that you're eating is just like air.
Yeah.
Pure air. And then, man, these were one of the most severe pains I've ever experienced. So never again any kind of protein fluff.
Yeah, I did that. I'd sprinkle on puff wheat and then some like Walden Farms caramel sauce.
It's
so
awful,
bad.
actually. When you really think about the taste, that wasn't good. But you convinced yourself that it tastes good.
Yeah. I do a lot of cauliflower pizza as well.
Oh, yeah, I did that as well. So for me, it was always the case that when what's it called again? The thing that you put underneath some kind of dough, right?
Baking tray?
Yeah, exactly. Put it on there, and it was always sticking to that. So I'm even embarrassed to say that out loudly.
You ate it off
because I tried to actually scrape it off. Didn't always work out, and so I just decided to eat that alongside with the.
Oh, you ate the paper?
Yeah. It's so
amazing.
We've done so fucked up things, man.
That's when you know you're dieted down. Just for the sake of
saving some fucking calories and not experiencing any kind of hunger.
Yeah, there's a point at which you just have to accept that no matter what you do, you're going to be hungry.
Yeah.
And the hunger's not the worst at the end, it's the energy. So anyway, I haven't cried from laughter in a long time, and I just did.
Man, it's just when you realize, or when you just look back and you realize how fucked up things you did just for the sake of avoiding hunger. Like honestly.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's really bad.
We have a lot of questions, which is very cool. So thank you very much, because especially we complained the last time what is wrong with you guys. That you're not putting in any kind of questions anymore. But we received a lot of them.
Loads.
And it's your turn to read them out loudly, right?
Yeah,
Steve?
it is. Let's go with... why did you... Okay, well, here we go. So we have one from our man, Andrew Potacek. And he has said... Oh, it's quite a long one. Any recent experience or evidence that you've tried, seen, or read about use of static holds, static stretching, or rest pause is, or any type of increase method that you think advances over just doing straight sets? Should we answer that first?
Yeah.
Or actually, is it all the same?
I have nothing to say on this one, because the question was like, have you tried, seen, or read anything? And I'm not working with static holds, static stretching. I mean, rest pause techniques in a metabolite block, but other than that, not really, to be honest. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it a great deal. It's come up on the podcast a few times in terms of like the stretching methods, and I forget what it's called, like I can't remember what it's called, where there's a few programs that include these like static stretches and holds. And I remember talking to Mike about it, and he was like, squat full range of motion, you're getting your stretch under load there. You don't need to do like additional stretches. The static holds is really funny, only because when I used to train back in Clapham, every time there was a guy that would train and he would just do these static holds on everything, and he'd just hold it. He'd just be there holding it. He'd be like, and sometimes I'd see him just like looking around, like, who's looking at me? And I'm just like, yeah, I'm looking at you because this is weird. All I know is like dynamic contractions are the best for hypertrophy in terms of having an eccentric and a concentric. So static holds, I'm going to do a heck of a lot. I imagine static holds and maybe some static stretching could be used in some sort of like metabolite fashion, just because I imagine that kind of metabolic stress is what it's doing potentially. And then same with you, rest pause is more of a metabolite kind of myorep style of technique. I think there are some differences, like when some people use rest pause on like a hack squat, and they just it's kind of like what's it called? The Widowmaker from Dante Trudel. And that's like hitting like multiple failure points. And I've never officially tried it. I might have done it a little bit by accident, where I've taken a little bit too many kind of breaths between, and I'm reducing fatigue, and I've already hit a failure point. I don't think I've really done it though, because you know when you're doing that. You know when you're not just getting your breath and you're kind of excessively extending that. And And I think generally the stimulus to fatigue ratio doesn't favor those methods. Just the amount of fatigue, like when you do that, like just imagine taking like the same set to multiple times to failure on a hack squat. I'm just like, I prefer to probably just do another set.
Yeah.
Kind of take some proper rest, take another set to failure or something.
Yeah, funny that you're bringing that one up, because here just today, it's the third week of my metabolite block. And of course, I'm using a lot of superset techniques, supersets in general, and it's getting psychologically very draining after a while. Just still concentrated, still then pushing to something like true failure. And in the third week and then leading into the fourth week, you are drained, and not just like physically speaking, but psychologically speaking, in my opinion. And I rather, and in that moment, when I was going from machine lateral raises into upright rows, I was thinking like, man, I would rather prefer doing straight sets right now.
Yeah, they add up. I'm doing quite a few of them as well, and it's just like, fuck, another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then does he say? He says, I like the heavy rest pauses, holds and squeezes, then high rep pumps to finish. Heavy rep pauses, holds and squeezes. Or do you think that doing mostly straight sets, if the most fundamental to growth, speaking from a more medium to advanced lifter, as I'm starting to like high intensity or volume by using methods as gym time is shorter with work and study, and the shock to the system has been crazy. And yes, I know this is probably due to different stimulus than previous training. Yeah, I think I was just going to say, whenever you do something new, it inevitably is novel. It's inevitably going to feel very, very different. And it can be refreshing, especially when you've been training with higher volumes for quite a long time. I think this is why some people enjoy the primer phase, because it is that short, sharp, intense sessions, heavy compound basics, and you remove lots of the fluff work. And you get to have that kind of high intensity, low volume training experience, but that doesn't seem to be the best for growth. And so I don't think it's a great long-term strategy, but it can potentiate a longer term strategy if used correctly.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I just wanted because I was thinking like, what do you, Andrew, and don't take it the wrong way. You know that I very much respect you and appreciate you. What do you mean with the shock to the system has been crazy? When people are saying something like that, I'm always like, what is it that you mean? Because the body, it doesn't really differentiate between like if you're doing a squat or moving over to a hack squat or doing like, I don't know, 20 repetitions or 10 repetitions or so. Just senses some tension and time under tension and just mechanical tension in general. And while I think that I know what you are referring to, I'm always a little bit confused when people are saying like, okay, shocking the system. In it for itself, you're always shocking the system because you are providing a stress that is then causing an adaptation. And without that stress, you wouldn't be shocking that system and you wouldn't be causing any kind of adaptations. And that's why I'm a little bit like, what is it that even that is them being said with these kind of things when people are saying this?
Yeah, it sounds, when I read back, thinking like heavy rest pauses, I'm not sure the holds and squeezes, what that means exactly, and then high rep pumps to finish. Kind of sounds, I don't know how the old school bros used to train, but it sounds potentially a little bit like that. And I think it's just not necessarily wrong. It's just not really very well thought out or logical or sequential. And it's not completely different to how we might advise. We just do it under much more thought out and kind of, thought out processes. Someone commented a really great comment in last week. They said something about like, we're not making things more complicated, we're making things clearer. So heavy rest pauses, holds and squeezes, then high rep pumps to finish might sound really like clear and easy, but actually what does that really mean? Whereas actually when you kind of lay it out into principles and the way we dissect things in terms of like rep ranges and then like longer term periodization, metabolite techniques, it might seem like that's making what Andrew said there very complex. So it's just making actually it's very clear because now we have like instructions, kind of like if you have, I don't know, someone says, oh yeah, to bake a cake, you just chuck some flour and some butter and like all this stuff in the oven and voila, you have a cake when it comes out. Like simple. It's like, well, but if you've never, please break down the ingredients and how to actually do this process properly so I get a good cake.
Yeah, and I think that especially as a coach, your obligation is to make things much more simplistic for your client than when they did themselves or so, right? Because the thing is that they are not paying you to make things much more complex and harder to understand. And that's also one of the reasons why when I'm prescribing any kind of metabolite techniques, I'm not using things such as Widowmakers or whatever the cluster sets and so, right? Because the effort in just me explaining it to them and then the likelihood that they get it from the get-go is super low. Right? And I want it to make it as easy to understand as possible so that they can purely focus on performing to the best of their abilities. Right? And I think that this is just something that you now brought up, and I wanted to elaborate on that because I think it's very important to actually bring it out there that making things truly more complicated is not beneficial. Right? You want to make things as simplistic as possible to hopefully get the most reward out of that. You only make things as complicated as it needs to be, basically.
Absolutely. I agree. Cool. I think we've covered that one.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we do a whole episode on Andrew's question again.
Once again.
So we have another supporter question. Thank you from another Andrew White. And he has asked, my question is about how you guys personally would transition out of the very end of a fat loss phase and peak process. Do you just bounce back to maintenance calories as soon as you finish the show or the photo shoot, or do you treat yourself to a nice meal or two? Also, for context, I should say the goal is to start massing afterward. My guess is Steve is robotic and gets right back to maintenance while Papa P lets his hair down a bit more. I'm not sure he's right.
No, I think we are both very robotic when it comes to that. I can't see that question, to be honest.
Oh, can't you?
No.
It's basically, what do you do after someone finishes their contest prep?
Oh, now I can see it. Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm already preparing them for the time that lies ahead of them before their time comes. Because one of the most common things that is actually occurring after a show or after a photo shoot is that people stand there without any kind of plan, and then they start to need wing it when the body is most susceptible and actually kind of making the most detrimental decisions. And that's why I'm always trying to prepare them as best as I can of the time that lies ahead and try to explain what may happen. Of course, I don't want to put some thoughts in their head that will never. Well, I would never try to manipulate them in a negative way of saying like, okay, this could happen. So basically a placebo effect or nocebo rather, of like, okay, this could happen. And if you're not careful, then this will happen, right? And then all of a sudden it happens only because it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because they were constantly thinking about that. That's not what I'm saying, but it's more like preparing them for the journey that lies ahead of them. So let's just say you're going on, I don't know, you're climbing Mount Everest. If you think that this is just like a short hiking trip, then probably bad things will happen. So you are practicing, or someone is actually guiding you to the top of the mountain to make the likelihood that you are getting there safely and coming down safely again much more pronounced. And it's the same there as well. I'm just telling them what may happen, right? And then we can create a plan. And based on the individual as well, you then can come up with a strategy. Because some people, you just know, okay, they are not going to binge because they have been so much on point, and I know their personality, and I'm absolutely convinced that this is not going to happen. With those individuals, of course, you can come up with quite a different strategy than with those individuals where you know, like, okay, they were already struggling when they had that goal in front of themselves. And what if the goal is not there anymore? Or when someone is already talking about what they want to do after a show or after a photo shoot, then you can already kind of know what type of person that is and then plan accordingly. So basically, it's not necessarily what we are doing after the show, but what's more important is to plan what is happening after the show, right? Because then it will hopefully set itself in place after that. I hope that makes sense.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
No, I did. I think it was really well said, because I think a lot of people don't think about post-show until it hits them. Or they're thinking about post-show and it's like, yeah, I bought all these sweets to have post-show or something. And it's like you said there, it's very individual dependent. And you normally know if someone can be trusted to go out and have like a free meal or not. Because some people, it's just not good. Like assuming the contest season is over, for some people, like having a free meal, yeah, they can do that. But other people, like they need to, make things a bit more flexible, but don't, I always talk about like a dog on reins. Like at the end of contest prep, you're like really you're on a short leash. You just want to loosen that leash a little bit. You don't want to let go of the dog because it's just going to go wild. So you just want to control that, which is going to be individual dependent.
Yeah, and the biggest mistake many people do, or the ones who are falling off the wagon, even if you're providing them with a plan, which is then unfortunate, are the ones who are too confident in themselves after a show or after a photo shoot. They've never perhaps experienced what lies ahead of them, and they think they have it all under control, and they don't need to actually follow the plan. This is where most people then fail.
Unfortunately, a lot of people seem to think post-show is a good time to maybe go on holiday or start intuitive eating because they've been so restrictive for so long.
Yeah.
And I think what we do a really good job of is making them understand from the get-go that this is part of contest prep. The recovery process is part of the prep, so don't think you're finished yet. We're finished once we've gone through like 2 months post-show. Then you're kind of in a healthier place, and then you can loosen the reins even more. But yeah, that's something I've become way better at, like being like, nah, I'm not. Yeah. We're not done when the show's done.
I like what you said there, because that just reminded me of one thing. Because there's a saying of like, when you think that you have to prep for 20 weeks, plan in like 40 weeks, right? Like, because the likelihood that you're not ready then is very, very high, right? Or when you think that you are ready, put another 10 pounds on that one or so, right? And the same way goes around as well for the post-show period. When you think that you're ready for actually, I don't know, eating the way you did before a contest prep or so, or when you think that you finished the contest prep, put another 2 months on it or so and be ready then. It's like also in the prama phase. I always tell my clients, like, when you feel ready now for the next hypertrophy block, give it another 2, or just imagine how we will feel like after 2 weeks. You will feel like incredible, right? And what's better, feeling great or feeling incredible?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where short term, it's so appealing to, and the goal's removed, so it's so appealing to just overeat, indulge in food, and it feels so great, it feels so rewarding, and it will do. You'll never be able to satisfy your hunger that short term though, because hunger signals are just out of control. But when you sit back and you look, well, what's the long-term cost of that short-term indulgence? Well, you're going to be like back at your peak mass weight within a couple of months. And now what do? You can't diet now because you've got a poor relationship with food. You're not in a good position to kind of go through that. And you don't really want to be in a surplus because now you're kind of over fat and you don't want to get more over fat. So now you have to maintain for months, which is not optimal for muscle growth and not optimal for your goals. And that ultimately isn't going to feel great to you. So just kind of put it in during that period of time, because you'll feel better for it, and you'll feel so thankful for doing it when you come back to look at it like, oh, imagine if I'd overindulged in that time, I wouldn't be able to be doing what I'm doing now. Yeah. I'm so glad I did that.
And basically you're buying yourself so much time, and you're saving yourself from so much despair if you just keep a tight leash for a little bit longer, because then you're actually getting to the point where you are fully recovered and you didn't really gain a bunch of weight, and you put yourself in a proper position of truly making some progress. And you're not in a position where you're fat, you are desperate about having gained so much fat, you want to go back into cutting again, and then it's kind of ending up in a vicious cycle and you're wasting years. And it sounds like, yeah, but this won't happen to me. Believe me, this is what so many people thought. And so many people ended up in such a bad place. And we have a common friend, Steve and I, and I don't want to name any kind of names or say the gender, but that individual, I think that prep and bodybuilding destroyed that individual's life to some extent. And that is so freaking sad. So freaking sad that the sport that I love perhaps destroyed a person, basically, because that individual is, I can't say it differently, morbidly obese now.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It is.
Absolutely.
It is the most shocking thing that I've ever seen, and like the transformation. We are always impressed by the transformation of like someone losing 100 pounds, right? It's kind of the other way around.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is so sad. And believe me, that individual didn't think that it will come to this.
And it's even more crazy because, particularly for the person, but like the potential there. So just like the potential for future success was pretty damn high. So it's just crazy to see someone's career kind of end in that sort of way. And yeah, we'd hate that to happen to other people for sure.
Not just the career, but also just think about the psychological demand, especially the period after the show. It's crazy. Because I was going through a phase where I was binging and also where I wasn't in a good place. But it was definitely not as crazy as for that individual. I can't even imagine how it must have been for that individual, right? And never underestimate the signals the body is giving you after a show or after a photo shoot, because it can be that you can't resist that. It can be. For some individuals, it will be a much easier time than for others, but you don't want to risk it. Why do you want to risk it, right? So rather be on the safe side, plan things accordingly, and then have a productive off-season and transition into the off-season and continue to be a happy person, right? Because that individual was probably not miserable when that individual was on stage and was performing well. It first started to slide downwards after the show, right?
Yeah. I think you have a presentation. Do you have a presentation on exactly this on the member site? I know you've got one on. It might be kind of stop binge eating, where you had the hedonic staircase and you had like a process people would go through.
Yeah.
I thought that's a great kind of thing for people to follow through on. So if there are members listening, like they can check that out, because I thought that was a good process.
And I'm kind of proud of that presentation, while I'm not an expert such as
Jacob Linarden.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Steve. Names.
I remember the name.
What? While I'm not an expert as he is, I have made my own experiences with that, and I've seen it with, unfortunately, many, many athletes. It's more common than people really think that it is. And I've already got feedback from people that have seen themselves in the things that I talked about, because a lot of the behaviors that people have who are binging are quite common. All right. Yeah. Feel free to have a look at that presentation, because this could also perhaps set you up in avoiding falling into these kind of behaviors and this kind of, unfortunately, repetitive behavior.
Yeah. I only want to bring it back because he said how you guys personally would transition out. So I don't know if there's anything personal we can bring up. I can just say, I was just going to say, for me, from my last show, I think me and Charlotte, my final show of the season was with the MPA. It was really late at night, so I think I had like a protein bar, and then we went back to our like hotel room. I went to sleep, and then the next day we went to Pizza Hut, and I got like a mini personalized pizza and like a salad bowl. But I tracked macros, and I was just back to like, I'm very robotic. Like, look at my MyFitnessPal streak is absurd. But I just go back and I'm just like, now I'm in a small surplus, whatever. So what I will say is, I think every time you do it, you get better. And I wish I was more assertive coming out, because I maintained a level of leanness, and I convinced myself that I feel good at that level of leanness. But I maintained under 10% body fat for like months, whereas I could have just kind of been in a more assertive surplus, got healthier quicker. I just wished I kind of wasted a bit of time kind of being in like a moderate surplus when I should have been in like a very assertive surplus. So that's what I do differently. But yeah, I'm very robotic post-show.
Yeah. No, and I just from personal experiences now, having gone through cyclical phases of cutting and gaining, I think that it's like you said, it's kind of a skill, and you get better at that, and you kind of know how you or what type of person you are when you're coming out of a dieting phase. And it's not that different than coming out of a contest prep. The feelings that you're having are just so much more pronounced, so much more exaggerated. So just like the hunger signaling, the cravings that you're having, perhaps, right? They are so much more severe that you need to perhaps control yourself a little bit more. So yeah, once again, also have a plan there. And I know that I wouldn't change things up drastically. I would have the same structure in place. So probably having like reducing the steps a little bit, slashing the cardio in half if I have done some cardio. In regards to nutrition, eat the same things, just with a little bit of a different distribution of macros. So higher calorically dense macros or food choices being pushed upwards, whereas something like vegetables, higher voluminous foods, pulled downwards, right? But still having the same meals to not overwhelm the taste buds and not fall into the, kind of binge-like behavior just because you're so susceptible and overeating once you're eating a highly palatable food. And you can easily avoid that in that you are eating the way you did in a cutting phase, just with a little bit of a different distribution of your food composition.
Yeah. It's a really hard sell because I think so many people are used to having that kind of really tasty post-show meal. But like you said, that's feeds the reward system where you have that dopamine hit and then you crave more tasty food. It's not filling. You can't fill yourself anyway. And it's like as a coach to your athlete, to tell them you can't do this because you simply won't be able to control yourself afterwards. It's such a hard sell because they're like, oh, I've been so restricted so long and these other coaches all do it. But it's like, yeah, but what do you know what's going to happen after you eat that? We don't know. So it's like you said, you just have to know your athlete, whether they can rein it back.
It's like being a drug addict and you have been away from that drug for a very long time, like 6 months or so, right? And you think like, yeah, I'm clean now. And then there's someone like presenting you that drug and you're just like, yeah, come on, just a tiny bit. Might not hurt, right? But if you have that shot or whatever it is, right, that crack pipe, then all of a sudden you get the craziest high ever, and then you are immediately back into smoking crack each and every single day. Sorry for all of the crack addicts who are listening. No offense to you guys. So
it's such because like so often people try and say, like sugar and cocaine, like they're not comparable or anything, but some of the reward pathways are so similar. And when you have restricted yourself for that long, and I'm not saying they're the same, I'm just saying like it's not a bad analogy to actually give someone, because that can open the floodgates completely. So yeah, it's like we keep saying, know yourself and do keep it tight. Err on the side of caution more than anything else.
And Andrew, I don't longer see yourself as a supporter after guessing that Steve is more robotic than me in that kind of sense. I take it as a personal offense.
So do we have any other supporter questions? I don't think we do we?
No.
So I'll go to the top because I normally just jumble around. We have our man Muffins. He has asked, loved the most recent podcast with Greg Potter, found the chat about feeding window in relation to your circadian rhythm particularly interesting, and wanted to get both your views on this and whether it's something you both implement. It's interesting because this came up.
I was just thinking the same.
Personally, I'm utilizing a 14-hour feeding window currently, with my first feeding at 7 a.m. and then my last meal at 9 p.m. before a bedtime of 10:30. If either of you are using such a tool, have you found it's increased your quality of sleep?
It's so funny that this question came up here today. So I've played around a little bit in regards to the last meal timing in the past when I was dealing with massive sleeping issues. But that was especially during a time of having dieted for a very long time. And I think that my sleep was mostly impacted by me just being in a caloric deficit for either a long time or too frequently, and my body just being fucked up and being more hungrier than I actually admitted that it is. And that's why I woke up in the midst of the night. And sometimes I even had something to eat then. And because it always happened at the same time, I would assume that then at some point it became a habit, not just because it was a habit of like, okay, I'm now in a certain environment, but more so due to ghrelin spikes. And we know that ghrelin, it gets used to certain time windows and time feedings. And we see in the scientific literature that once you're eating at a specific time, ghrelin is always being released, and there's a huge spike for like half an hour or so. And if you're not eating anything, then it comes down again, very much to baseline. And I would very much assume that this happened in the midst of the night to me, that I then always got up. And then I thought like, okay, let's have a meal right before bedtime. Perhaps that keeps me kind of satiated throughout the night, and I don't get these signaling anymore, or this signaling anymore. And that kind of did the trick. But what really did the trick was just like having a truly good structure in place. And that first came when Katie came into my life. Like, honestly, that was one of the single biggest things that kind of helped me in getting back on track when it comes to my nutritional kind of behavior and all that kind of stuff. So yes, I played with it a little bit, but I didn't feel like it did as much for me as it may do for other people. And I've played around with that also with some of my athletes, where we tried out, okay, have a high protein, perhaps also high carb meal that is easy to digest right before bedtime or 1 hour before bedtime. We've taken a look of whether this improves the sleep quality, but majority of times actually it didn't, to be honest. I wish that it would, but no.
Yeah. It's interesting because after I've chatted to Greg offline about this as well, and he was saying how he thinks that for physique competitors, it might be a bit like when you're cutting, actually having that protein and that snack with a bit of faster digesting carbohydrates could improve sleep for someone who's dieting, because it removes the chance of being hungry before bed and things, or during the night. Whereas for someone massing, kind of when they're having lots of food, having that a bit away from the sleeping window is probably a good idea. Just some not that that's been studied, but just his thoughts and theories behind it, which I think practically makes some sense.
Yeah,
as well.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
I found if I have to eat 1,000+ calories within an hour before bed, my sleep is fucked. Like I'm just hot, sweaty. I can't get to sleep. My sleep is not in a good way, but that's because I'm on so much food. I think if you're on less food and it was just a normal meal for you, having that near to bed, probably not such a problem, or just having a protein feeding, probably not a big problem. I've personally tried to use the circadian eating. And like I said previously, for me, my appetite's just higher, mid to the end of the day. So actually I get I just make sure that I don't get lazy, and I'm like, Steve, just have a fucking massive bowl of cereal now so that I don't have that huge meal towards the end of the day. Because it happened to me when we were traveling to Bude, actually, where we're in the car for 6 hours. I didn't pack enough food in the car. We got back to our hotel at 11 p.m. I had over 1,000 calories that I needed to consume to hit my target. And I was just I'm just going to have a protein shake and go to bed, because my sleep is going to be hugely impacted if I have this. Well, not hugely, but it's definitely going to be negatively impacted quite a bit if I have this big amount of food. So I'm definitely trying to do it myself, and I'm also practicing it with clients. But yeah, I tend to eat an hour after waking, and then I would ideally not eat 2 hours after 2 hours before bed. And if I do eat, it would just be protein. But at the moment, with the amount of food I've got, it's just I eat when I can. Yeah. So when I would be on I don't know, just post diet or during dieting, I think that'd be actually a really great and reasonable approach.
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea that you're bringing up, in that when you're gaining, you want to actually have the last meal a little bit longer away from the bedtime. And maybe when you are cutting, you want to consider having it closer to bedtime. I really like that approach and idea, to be honest. In the last cutting phases that I did, I never actually got to the point where the cutting actually impacted my sleep, to be honest.
That's good.
So basically, I have the same eating window and same eating behavior or frequency as I did in the cutting phase. And perhaps now that once again, we are robots. I'm practicing what I'm doing right now since, I don't know, the last 2 years. That's how I eat on a daily basis. each and every single time, each and every single dinner, lunch, it's the same time, to be honest, unless something gets in the way. But this is hardly ever the case.
Cool. I think we probably need to just pick a winner, don't we?
Yeah, pick a.
And we need a question.
What's again? Winner, chicken dinner. So yeah, let me just share my screen with you guys. Here it is, share screen. So let's take the browser. Where's the browser? There it is. So share. Just confirm that you can see that, Steve.
Yes.
Okay. So as always, picking the link, putting it here, get comments, and then refill.
I'm ready. Oh.
Why? Please log in your Facebook account. I don't want Facebook. Oh, that's the Facebook URL. Come and pick a YouTube. Sorry for that. Come and pick a YouTube. My bad. I will cut that out.
No, there was different ones.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. So here we are now. YouTube. Get comments. 31 total comments. So let's see. Drum roll.
There was some good ones.
Jason.
Ooh.
IGR. Strawberries are staple for my cuts. Lots of fiber, vitamins, low kcals, really satiating and delicious. Absolutely. And I have to say, let me just stop sharing my screen. This is, funny enough, one of the things that I always bring up to people who are binging. Like, I bring up the example of strawberries. If you have the urge or feel the urge of binging, have always something like strawberries in your fridge, or something like, I don't know, carrots, baby carrots maybe. And if you have the urge and the cravings, go ahead and eat that entire, I don't know, box of strawberries or pack of baby carrots. It may end up being like 100 to 200 calories, but it's still better than ending up eating 1,000 or 2,000 additional calories. And after that, you will probably already feel a little bit more full, especially with strawberries. It's like, what is it, 30 kcals per 100 grams or so? And if you then eat like 500 grams, you will already feel kind of stuffed. And most of the time, this helps then to overcome the cravings. And yeah, strawberries, here we are.
So was it Jason? Yeah, Jason.
Yeah.
Reach out to one of us and we can give you... so far, everyone has reached out when they've been a winner, which is really cool because that means they're watching.
So this week, I think I very much liked your question there, Steve, because this week there were some very good entries and so many where I was just like, yeah, that's what I'm doing as well. And yeah, that was actually quite delicious as well. Yeah, so that's funny.
I'm trying to think of a good question this time. Do you have one, or shall I? I've got one in mind, but I'm not sure. I'm not totally convinced it's the best question. People's favorite metabolite technique, because I was thinking of
metabolite stuff as well. So yeah,
cool. So yeah, favorite metabolite technique, and give us the protocol for the muscle group. I'd like to hear it.
And then next time we are creating a program just based on the metabolite techniques you guys posted in the comment section.
Imagine that would be hell. Cheers, guys.
Yeah, cheers.
So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.